What is going on, everybody? We're back. We keep saying goodbye and we keep showing up. Here we are. But today is our last show officially. Welcome to the final NHL strategy show of the season. Stokastic NHL strategy show sponsored by Bet365. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always. No, Jake doesn't show his face on YouTube anymore. He's too good for us. He hasn't since the All-Star break. But joining me as always, Slim Cliffy. How are you enjoying the first 3 days of the playoffs?
I'm enjoying them a lot, man. Those 30-minute staggers are perfect. Like right at the end of the very first game, you get that overlap where there are 3 playoff games going at the same time. You have playoff hockey going for 6+ hours each night. I mean, you gotta love it. Not every game, every minute of every game is super thrilling. That's just the nature. But I like the games that I've watched have been pretty entertaining. Even like I think most people would have agreed that the Islanders Carolina would have been pretty boring to watch. And maybe the first game wasn't the best. Last night was a really good game to watch. So it's been pretty good hockey. We've seen a lot of road teams are winning. There are not going to be a lot of series that go home or go back to the other city with the team with home ice advantage up 2-0, and that makes for a lot of possible interesting outcomes. So I'm really enjoying the early part of the playoffs. Also, as a Montreal fan, like I got a cup final run a couple years ago that was completely out of nowhere and completely unexpected. And now they're in the middle of a rebuild that's starting to take shape and looking kind of good. So I just get to watch everybody else's fan bases just tear each other apart. And it's kind of fun in a sadistic kind of way. So I don't know. Pretty good playoffs for me. How are you enjoying?
I mean, I'm pretty low stressed, even though my Rangers are in there. I'm a New York Jets fan, so I'm used to disappointment. You could also say that about my first marriage, but I just think, man, like there has been some wildly bad coaching decisions. There have been some bad goalie plays. It's just like Sorokin let in some weird ones last night.
That goal, the own goal where his player batted it in, like, okay, maybe the deflection came from like 45 feet away or whatever, but at the same time, like that's such a weird play. Like the player basically slung the puck behind him 45 feet, low blocker. Like that, you just don't see that.
He was looking in the corner, it looked like he was expecting the puck to go around the boards. I think that's
and if you look at the replay, when the puck bounces right in front of Sorokin, it bounces to the left like 3 inches or 4 inches or something like that. If it bounces straight, it goes right into his pad, and we're not even having this conversation. And I think that goal perfectly encapsulates like what playoff hockey is all about. Like you can control the play, and you can be playing well, and your goalie can be hot, and then all of a sudden your defenseman basically bats a puck out of midair backwards 45 feet and goes low blocker on your own goalie on a shot that would have hit his pad if it didn't bounce to the left 3 inches. Like that's literally the margin of that game last night. So like playoff hockey, man, there's nothing like it. I wish I was doing better in DFS, that's for sure. I got blanked last night. I went with Islanders 3. I was so mad because I had Islanders 2 and then decided to switch to Islanders 3 to upgrade a defenseman, and then it all fell apart. And I wouldn't have won anything, but I'm pretty sure I would have at least cashed. And, those are the decisions you make, and I've been making them all season long. So hopefully you get a little respite from that as the playoffs wear on. How'd you do last night?
I cashed. I ran back the exact same lineup from Monday. It fit, even though people got a little bit more expensive. Evgeny Dadonov and Wyatt Johnson had a big game. I cannot believe Dean Evason went to Marc-Andre Fleury last night. I know we're talking about it the next day, which sounds a bit results-oriented, but like Gustafsson just had like a 53 save double overtime win, and he turns to Marc-Andre Fleury, who let in almost 4 expected goals above expected. Like he had an awful game. Like, I cannot believe they went to Fleury last night.
I mean, it's not only that. It's like, at least, like, if you look at Allmark and Swayman, like, Allmark had the better season, but at least Swayman was pretty good. And if Boston decided to go to Swayman in Game 3, I probably wouldn't agree with it, but at least I would understand. Going from Gustafsson to Fleury made no sense. Like, by any goaltending metric we have, Fleury was the definition of league average this year, while Gustafsson was, he only made 39 starts or something like that. But in those 39 starts, he was one of the best goalies in the league, like amongst the top half dozen with like the Saros and the Hellebucks and the Allmarks and Sorokins and those guys. So, like I said, if you were going to a 1B that was somewhat in the neighborhood, I could kind of get that. But there is a clear number one here when you look at their performance this season, and not going with them, it was just a big mistake. It's just that simple.
I still think Dallas would have won that game. Hartman was out.
Yeah.
Their top center was Sam Steele.
Yeah, like Dallas, like, let's get that straight. Dallas played extremely well last night. They were probably going to win that game regardless, but it's, the difference between 7-3 and 3-2 or something.
Yeah. And then, Edmonton had a 2-0 lead. Started taking those penalties. Everyone started up with from the Oilers, but they subbed down. They got a big goal from Slim Klim Kostin, and then they hit the empty net, and they're going to LA tied at 1.
Yeah, and I think we kind of expected Edmonton to win that game, though. Like, they dominated the first game. And they just got undisciplined. Los Angeles, and they played well again last night. So I think Los Angeles is just happy to get the 1-1 split, get Velarde back in the lineup, and hopefully they'll get Kopitar back eventually. Or Fiala, sorry.
Yeah. They got the 1-1 split. The problem is McDavid hasn't scored a goal in the series yet. It's coming, I think. But anyway, we have the 4 games tonight, and I said on Twitter yesterday after Bunting got suspended 3 games, it's forcing Keefe to break up Bunting, Matthews, and Marner, which may end up being a good thing. The issue is the Riley-Shen pairing is atrocious. Hull can't play meaningful minutes. He just isn't defensively responsible enough. They should have put Liljegren in the lineup. They did move ROR down to the third line with Knies and Acai Berry, which is going to be a good third line, way better than they had. The issue is that puts Kerfoot into the top 6, and man, we'll talk about it in a second. Let me get through these ad reads real quick, and then we'll start breaking down these games. Make sure to give us a like and subscribe. You know the drill. If you don't know the drill, you even watch hockey, bro? Give us a like and subscribe so you can keep with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Don't forget to sign up for the Stokastic Hall of Fame by changing your avatar on DraftKings and FanDuel by going to stokastic.com/avatar and downloading it there. You place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5K contestants. You can no longer do that on DraftKings because DraftKings didn't run the $5 poke check today, citing the data that it doesn't fill, even though it is the only contest that has filled every time during the playoffs. And you can tweet the win to @StokasticHOF on Twitter. If you don't have the tweet box, you can email us with the screenshot. You get a 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, which is a $120 value, which gives you all the tools for all the sports. We'll have a deal with that later. And don't forget, we are sponsored by Bet365. We also have a deal for you a bit later in the show, but let's get into that Leafs game. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 2.9 total heading into Toronto. The Maple Leafs have a 3.5 total. Andrei Vasilevsky, probable. Ilya Samsonov is confirmed, as I was alluding to. Bunting got suspended for 3 games, which was also a bit surprising. I thought it was just going to be 1 game. He doesn't have a massive history. I thought if it was Kadri, 3 games would have been fine, but that hit was real dirty. 3 games is kind of crazy, but the Department of Player Safety, they're not human. So it could have been anywhere from no suspension to 3 years. But Ryan O'Reilly moves down to the third line with Matt Knies and Noel Akari. That is an interesting line because when Ryan O'Reilly got traded to the Leafs, his offensive impacts were really, really good, but his defensive numbers have kind of slid a little bit. Now, being a third line will help solidify the bottom six. I just don't know how good a Ryan O'Reilly and Matt Knies line is going to be defensively, but it does lengthen their lineup. Moving Yarncroc up with Matthews and Marner is better than having Bunting there. The problem is that puts Kerfoot into the top six, and he's just a massive boat anchor. He's going to drag down Tavares and Nylander. I think the biggest issue, honestly, is still having the Riley-Shen pairing. They're just brutal. Now, on the Tampa side, Michael Eyssimont is out. Victor Hedman is a true game-time decision. I haven't seen anything on Eric Chernak. It looks like Tanner Jeannot is going to be in the lineup, so he's probably just going to slide right into Eysimont's role. The top six remains the same. The first game, we were kind of on both sides, and we were kind of expecting the Leafs to win, and they just kind of did the Leafs thing. The playoff Leafs arrived. They weren't ready for the moment, and they looked awful. This game's a little bit more interesting because Jeannot hasn't been in a while. The Leafs have a bit of a deeper lineup, it seems. I think the analysis maybe changes a little bit because of the moving parts.
Yeah, it does change a lot. Like I just want to talk about like injuries and guys that are in and out on both sides. Like you said, Eyssimont hurt, and they haven't officially said Jeannot officially in and on his line or anything like that, but that's where he had been playing before he was injured, and it just makes the most sense because the fourth line played well last game. They won. They're not going to change up the top six, so you just switch one for one, and that's it. Now, I think that's important because Jeannot will be going on a line with Nick Paul, and before Eyssimont got hurt, that Tampa line wasn't playing particularly well, but I mean, it was half of one game, so like you can't really judge anything. But Paul had played a fair bit with Jeannot after Jeannot got traded from Nashville, and they were not good together. Like, I think, Tanner Jeannot, I think he had one goal after he came over from Nashville, 1 goal in 20 games or whatever it was. If you look at their on-ice expected goals against numbers, so their defensive numbers, they're pretty good. They're much better than league average, but they're not generating any offense. So they're actually getting outplayed. And that's why I agree with you. I think the O'Reilly-Knies line is kind of interesting here because, like, let's be honest, Knies looked good. He only had, I think 2 games at the end of the season in the regular season with Toronto, but he looked good in those games. Ryan O'Reilly, I don't think he's the defensive player he was 5 years ago, but he's still a pretty good offensive player. In fact, I was looking at some 5-on-5 data tracked by a guy named Corey Snaster, and Ryan O'Reilly had one of the biggest increases from last year to this year in scoring chance creation in the league for an individual player. Like, I think his went up like nearly 50% individually just in one season. So maybe he's sacrificing some defense to add some offense. That might be what's going on. But regardless, he put up pretty good offensive numbers this year. The problem is he had some bad assist luck in St. Louis, but that's certainly turned around in Toronto. So it's weird because 3 days ago, I was thinking Tampa Bay's bottom six might be a pretty big advantage in this series for them. And now that, Toronto realized that they should probably have a good third line, and Eysimont's hurt, the pendulum might have gone back in the other direction. And now I think Toronto 3 makes one of those nice, super cheap lineups, super cheap stacks that you can put in, like just a 2-man of O'Reilly and Knies or something like that. Like if you look at our ownership, I'll bring up our ownership real quick from Stokastic. Matthews, 30-some%, Marner, 25%, Yarncroc, 20%. There's a whole bunch of guys in double digits. And then the third line, O'Reilly, 2%, Achari, 3%. Like, those guys aren't going to be played here tonight. And I think with Eyssimont out and the way Paul and Jeannot were playing at the end of the season, it's not a bad matchup for Toronto 3. So I think, we're going to get into the cheap lines later in the slate. But if you're looking for a filler-type stack, I think something like, O'Reilly and Knies to go with your Colorado stacks or whatever, if you're playing Colorado, is just fine. Now, looking at the top 6, the top line was pretty good with Calle Jarnkrok. Like, we do have to say that. 3.4 expected goals for, 2.3 against, like, 4.2 actual goals for. Here's one thing that people might not realize is that Matthews and Marner play a lot. Play a lot off the cycle. Like, there are a lot of ways to play offensively in the NHL, but they generally get binned into two groups. One is off the rush and one is off the cycle. Matthews and Marner actually play off the cycle quite a bit, and that's one thing that Calle Jarnkrok is really, really good at. So I think Jarnkrok makes a lot more sense there than almost any other winger that they've tried out there this season. And it makes me, a believer in Toronto 1. Like I said, they had really good offensive numbers this season. They're going up against Tampa 1/Tampa 2. I'm going to get into that matchup right now, actually. In the game 1, they actually sent out Matthews against that Cirelli-Killorn line quite a bit. But that was when, John Tavares and William Nylander, Ryan O'Reilly was the second line, right? Now that Ryan O'Reilly's down on the third line, I don't know that they want to put the Tavares line out against top comp, and they're certainly not going to put their third line with O'Reilly and Knies. So I imagine Matthews goes back to that Kucherov matchup. And Tampa's top line has struggled defensively at times this season. They're a little bit better down the stretch, but still below average and really relying on Andrei Vasilevsky. So I hate to say it, but I think I don't mind going back to the Toronto top line here. I do have concerns with the Toronto blue line because I don't think they're playing their good puck movers. Like, I'm with you. I would probably play Liljegren over one of like Shen or Hall or something like that. I do think they need more puck movers in the lineup, but it is what it is. I think Toronto 1 is just fine again. Toronto 2, like, they were fine with Kerfoot there, but if you look at the ownership, they're coming in with 13% ownership, which is basically bang on their top 2 stack probability. And they're coming in, basically the same ownership as like New Jersey and Vegas and a Rangers, one of the, both Rangers lines actually that are all in the similar price range. So I just think when they're coming in bang on with their top 2 and, the power play, it looked good. I have some concerns about its longevity and, with the way that they've broken things up, there's only one guy on the top power play unit now on that Toronto second line. So it's Toronto 1 for me on the Toronto side, maybe Toronto 3 if you need a filler. On the Tampa side, I'm going to be honest, like, I have absolutely no problem playing Toronto 1 here or Tampa 1 here tonight. I really don't. Excellent leverage. They should come in all single digits tonight or close to it, depending on the contest. I have no problem with Tampa 1. Tampa 2, though, has played really, really well together. And one thing I noticed is Anthony Cirelli's shot quality this season in particular has gotten a lot better. Like, he is really getting better with his shot selection. And that was something that had hampered him in prior seasons. And I think it's one of the reasons why their offensive numbers look so good together. Like, 3.4 expected goals per 60 minutes, 4.7 actual goals per 60 minutes for that for that Tampa Bay second line. That's better than the Toronto top line this season, both numbers. So, like, and they're going into that that Toronto second line. It has Kerfoot now, so maybe they're going to be a little bit better defensively. But they're coming in with pretty low ownership. They're only 12,500 on DK. I think it's Tampa 2 I kind of like as a secondary stack here tonight.
Yeah, we were on Tampa 3 the other night, but like, I guess is fine. He's min price, but I'm kind of in agreement with you. Like, in my one lineup, it's going to be tough to play Tampa. I think you can. They played well in the first game.
Can I just make one more point why you might want to play Tampa here tonight?
Yeah.
There's a goalie, an ex-NHL goalie. His name's Mike McKenna. He wasn't like a regular goalie or anything like that. He was kind of like a fringe NHL, AHL type goalie. He had a Twitter thread this morning talking about just watching Samsonov in game one, and he's pretty convinced Samsonov is playing hurt. And he pointed out a bunch of highlights of like Samsonov kind of struggling a little bit to get up and, being a little bit slow on his pushes and things like that. And once you see it and, somebody that knows what they're talking about points it out, yeah, it kind of makes sense. And I hate talking about an injured goalie because it is one of those things. Like if you tell me a goalie's injured, I'm going to stack the hell against them for sure. And that's why I kind of hesitate saying it. But this is a former NHL goalie saying he's pretty sure that this NHL goalie is playing hurt, and he showed video evidence why. I just think there's at least a little bit of merit to it when you like Samsonov was really good this year, and he looked like absolute dog water in that game, like the worst that I've seen him play this season. So maybe there's some merit to it.
Yeah, maybe there is. That's something you can take a chance on more in, MME. You don't really want to, unless you really do like Tampa 1 anyway, and then you just play them. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I think Tampa 1's a fine contrarian option. I'm in agreement with you on Tampa 2, especially Cirelli. Just trying to leave Killorn off, Killorn's one of those guys you leave off, he kills you, you play him, he does nothing. You know what I mean? So, like, if you have a Killorn, fetish, or I know some guys who have Killorn fetishes and love betting his points every game. But you do what you do there. I'm more on the Toronto depth. I do like O'Reilly, Guinness tonight. That top line with Yarncroc is also of interest. I don't have much interest in Toronto 2 tonight. I guess you can one off Tavares, you can one off Nylander, you can add them into a power play stack because Tampa's penalty kill is not great, but I think Tampa, I keep doing that. We both do that. Toronto, Tampa, Toronto, Tampa, Tampa, Toronto. I'm in on Toronto 1 and Toronto 3. Although, if the Leafs want to get blown out in 4 games, please, by all means, go ahead.
Wouldn't hate it.
Yeah. Wouldn't hate it at all. New York Rangers, they 2.6 total. Heading into New Jersey, the Devils have a 2.9 total. Igor Shesterkin, Vitek Vanacek confirmed. Vitek Vanacek price went from 8,100 to 7,000 today. Oh, that's FanDuel. Look at me. He's 7,700 on DraftKings. Okay, look at me catching my mistakes. This game, the Rangers' first game kind of went as expected. No, not the score, but like the first 10 minutes of the game, the Devils looked shell-shocked and the Rangers took advantage. And then for the rest of the game, it was kind of Devils were like, oh, crap, like this is a little bit more physical, and Igor is really good. I think they make an adjustment tonight, and this game's a little bit closer. Lindy Ruff might be panicking a little bit here. He mixed up all 3 lines, I believe. No, he left Palat, Bratt, and Hughes together, but he moved Timo Meier up to the top line with Nico Hischier and moved Tomas Tatar off, which is a mistake, I think, because Hischier Tatar defensive numbers are ridiculous. I think that brings Kreider, Zibanejad, Kane into play where they were not really an ideal play on Tuesday because they're going to see a whole bunch of Hischier Tatar. Now I think they're playable. They're coming in with 4% ownership. The second line coming in a little bit lower ownership. The chalky line in this game are the Devils. They're, again, very chalky. I get it. I know it's a 4-game slate. I'm going to sound like an absolute homer here, but like Igor looked very, very good on Tuesday.
I swear to God, I was watching that game and I was thinking in my head, like, Igor just treated it felt like Igor just treated the regular season like it was a 6-month exhibition game. And then he was like, all right, time to play well now.
Yeah. He gave up that shootout or the penalty shot goal to Jack Hughes, which is a really nice move because Igor was very good on the shootout, but like he made some 10-bell saves early in that game to really suck the air out of that building. But like, you want to play the Devils? I think that's fine. I'm gonna get to that level of chalky. I just don't know if I want to do it against Igor.
Yeah, we should say, like, it's not like it's terrible chalk either, right? Yeah. Like, people that watch this show will know we slagged the Nashville Predators back in March when they were, 4% top two probability, but 25% owned or something like that. I'll bring up our top stacks tool again. I'm going to bring it up a bunch today because it might be it is my last chance to do it for probably like 6 months. Here's New Jersey, like 14.4% top two stack probability on DK, 17% ownership, 14.7% probability on the Hischier Mercer line, 12.8% ownership. So like they're both pretty close, like, around their leverage. So like I don't have a problem playing them outright. The mix-ups of the lines tell me that these lines aren't guaranteed to stay together this game. If the Rangers get up a couple goals or something like that. I also don't know how the line matching is going to go because they didn't really stick Hischier out, all game long against Zibanejad. It was basically only like half the game.
Which I thought was weird. I thought that was weird.
In fact, they used that Bokvist-Haula line with Meier on it as a shutdown line at times against Zibanejad. But now that Meier's not there, that he got moved up the lineup, are they going to put Hischier back on like sole shutdown duty of the Zibanejad line? You know what I mean? That's what I'm kind of wondering. Like, I think it's going to be Hischier against Zibanejad for most of the 5-on-5 matchups, but I wouldn't be surprised to see if they change up a little bit. I also noticed that they were sending out the Jack Hughes line against the Kid line every now and again last game, which, I like the Kid line. That favors the Jack Hughes line quite a bit. On the Devils side, like to get to that your point about Tatar, like I mentioned it on Twitter earlier today, their expected goals for, like, I'm just talking offense here. The defensive numbers are relatively similar. They're better with Tatar, but at least they're in the neighborhood. The offensive numbers are just night and day. Like the expected goals for generated with Tatar and Hischier on the ice, it's something like 60% higher than it is without Thomas Tatar there. Like we're not talking like an increase of like 10 or 15%. It's literally like 60% with Tatar, and the goals follow. It's not just expected goals. They also score at that rate. And they played pretty well. Like they gave up, I think, one bad goal against in that game. Okay. It was Dawson Mercer. It's his first playoff game, in a shutdown role. Pseudo shutdown role, I guess. Like, give him a little bit of a break, Lindy, for the love of God. Anyways, I don't think it hurts the Hischier line that much because, to reiterate, Hischier's numbers are considerably worse without Thomas Tatar on his wing this year. But I view Timo Meier as a pretty good replacement for him, right? Like, this isn't Yegor Sharangovich or Mike McLeod or, Miles Morningwood getting the call up.
Rise up.
Yep, rise up. This is Timo Meier. He's a legitimate top 10 left winger in the league. So I think the numbers will still be fine, but it seems like a pretty big gamble to take. Yeah, I guess, you got to do in the playoffs, but it really does worry me. And it makes me wonder how long Meier actually stays on that top line. Again, if the Rangers get up a couple goals. Like when Meier was there, they did play together in the regular season. They did generate a fair number of shot attempts, but Meier played a lot better on the Jack Hughes line. So, if you want to play Meier, Hischier, and Mercer, I think it's fine. I would probably dip down to that Hughes, Bratt, Palat line. They're probably going to see a fair bit of, that Panarin, Trocheck second line. They're probably going to see a fair bit of that Kid line. That Devils second line, 3.5 expected goals, 4.4 actual goals this season. They weren't that great in game one. I expect to bounce back in game two. Like, if anything on the Devils side, it would be the Jack Hughes line. I'm not power play stacking. It's a really bad power play spot for them. So it's the Hughes line or nothing, but I'm not super keen on playing New Jersey tonight. On the Rangers side, everything looks basically the same as it did last game. There's not much ownership on them. First, second, like the third line is going to be a little bit overowned because they're a filler that can squeeze in with Colorado. But I think all three Rangers lines are perfectly playable here. I don't have a real lean on either line. In a nutshell, I would rather get the line, rather get the Jack Hughes line, So that would lead me to Panarin. And one thing, this is interesting. One thing that I noticed when looking through the numbers this morning for the Rangers power play since Patrick Kane got there is Artemi Panarin is basically the trigger guy now.
Yeah, they moved him.
He leads the top power play unit in shot attempts by a lot. I was looking at it earlier today. It's something like 25% higher than the next closest guy, and that's Chris Kreider. And I think it's Kreider. It might be Kane. Either way, like Panarin's kind of turning into the trigger guy, which feels weird. So, but we'll go with it. I thought him and Tarasenko played well in game one. Tarasenko scored, so easy enough. But I thought they did play well together. They did play well in the regular season, 2.9 expected goals for, 2.8 against. And again, like we said on the first show when we covered this series, Panarin is usually one of those players that can break expected goals, so that they're generating 2.9 is pretty good. So with Panarin figuring so prominently on the power play, with this line playing well, with them probably getting second and third line matchups, I think I like the Rangers' second line here today, even though they're not that correlated on the power play. So I think it's both second lines in this game that I like best. But in a nutshell, I would probably rather play Rangers 1, Rangers 2, or Rangers 3 over Devils 1, Devils 2, or Devils 3 tonight.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because they didn't really start practicing that type of power play until like last week, where they're kind of moving Mika around, which was weird because he was electric in the playoffs last year on the power play. He wasn't at practice yesterday. He skated this morning. Maybe he's a little banged up. Panarin has a great shot. Don't get me wrong. So I do kind of like that Rangers 2 call. I kind of don't mind adding in Chris Kreider because he's always involved in the power play, it seems.
Sure.
And if you need a filler, I think the kids are fine. So I'm kind of on board, and it's you can call me home or whatever. I prefer for DFS anyway. I prefer the Rangers side. Now I need to address this Devils fan in the chat here. Disagree with the take that Igor played so great. 4 power plays, no shots. Here's the thing. If you're not going to get shots, how are you going to get tested on the power play? The Rangers' penalty kill is very good. The Devils were not ready for the physicality of the Rangers' penalty kill. They clogged up all the lanes. You can't get tested if you don't get shots. He looked great at 5-on-5. So you tell me, Mr. B-Man. We'll see at the end of the series what's going on there. 5-on-5 was not.
I kind of agree. Like, the Devils didn't look great offensively, but they only put up 28 shots or something like that. But even if they put up 40 shots, they're losing that game. So
they looked absolutely shell-shocked the first 15 minutes of the first period. They kind of settled down. Then they got Igor. Like, Igor didn't give up a 5-on-5 goal. It's just an awful performance. I don't know what you want me to say. Yeah, KJ just putting words into my mouth. He didn't give up a 5-on-5 goal. What? Like, okay. All right. I'll let it go. We'll move on. Woosah, Captain. I love Devils fans. As we mentioned on top, we are sponsored by Bet365. We make money from the books is to take advantage of great promo offers when they become available, and have a great one from Bet365. The only way to get this is to click the link below in the description. You sign up, you make a deposit. The min deposit is $10, but you can bet as low as $1 and get $200 in bonus bets at Bet365. Bonus bet. Sorry for sneezing. Bless you. Bonus bets winnings are added to the bonus bets balance. Bonus bet wager excluded from returns. Terms and conditions apply. Only available in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and Virginia. They are expanding to more states, so make sure to check that out. Seattle with a 2.5 total. Going into Colorado, the Avs have a 3.5 total. Philip Grubauer, Alexander Georgiev are confirmed. Avs kicked off Nishushkin and put Lehkonen on the top power play unit. I was kind of hoping they would add Lehkonen and take off Confer. But
it's one of those monkey paw situations where you're like, hey, can you get Arturi Lehkonen back on the power play? And then, the old monkey paw curls. That's
Yeah. But one thing I did not expect, I knew the Seattle penalty kill was good. They were suffocating in game one there. Grubauer looked pretty good. You talked about it a bunch. They're a good defensive team. It's just kind of on Grubauer here. You dropped some stats on the Gord line facing off on the McKinnon line this season. It's a small sample, but it's kind of shocking still. That being said, the analysis from the other day still remains. I think Colorado is the better team, obviously. I still think they win the series, whether it's, a bit longer now. I think McKinnon and Rantanen will end up having a big game at some point this series. Could be today, could be whatever. But, I don't think it's as simple as, let's just jam in Colorado now, because Seattle came to play and they look good.
Yeah. I am going to start on the Seattle side. They did look really, really good in game one. Yeah, we did mention it the other day, but I'll just reiterate it. Over the course of the season, the only teams with a lower expected goals against in Seattle were Carolina, Los Angeles, and Boston. They had better expected goals numbers than New Jersey, Colorado, Dallas, Calgary, what have you. The only reason their goals against numbers were anywhere as close to the middle of the league was the goaltending. If this team has 925 goaltending instead of 906 or whatever it was at 5-on-5, this team not necessarily favored in the Western Conference, but probably a wagon. And what I mentioned earlier today was just how dominant Seattle had been up against McKinnon and Rantanen. They were basically shutting them down during the regular season. Only 3 games. But against me, when Seattle played Rantanen and McKinnon, Rantanen and McKinnon generated 1.7 expected goals per 60 minutes against the Kraken at 5-on-5 and under 50 shot attempts per 60 minutes.
That's crazy.
Honestly, you'll look at most of the teams they play against, their expected goals will probably be double that. And I'm not exaggerating either. They will probably be double that. It is a small sample, but that's 3 full games of Seattle completely shutting down the McKinnon line, both on the road and at home. And now 4, including game 1 of the postseason. So, you got to consider that one of the best teams in the league defensively this season that has done a tremendous job in a small sample shutting down Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, can keep shutting down Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen as long as Grubauer doesn't fall apart. We got to remember, Colorado still generated 35 shots in that game. It's not like they were, held to 21 shots and looked feckless or something like that. But even on the chances they gave up, Grubauer was standing his ground and playing well. So I got to give him credit. That Colorado top line, we talked about it on the last show. They were really, really good this season. And one thing I always look for with Colorado players is how they do with and without Cale Makar on the ice, because that's one of the little patterns that I've been able to notice over the last few years is that, big surprise, players are going to do better when Cale Makar is on the ice with them. But this season, Rantanen and McKinnon were basically as good offensively with Makar on the ice as they were without him. And I think that's important to note because, it certainly doesn't make the matchup proof as we've seen against Seattle, but it's good to know that as well, even if in those shifts when Makar is not on the ice, they can still generate in theory. They did combine for 16 shots on goal in game 1. McKinnon, Rantanen, and Rodriguez. So yes, they were still getting ice time. Rodriguez played close to 20 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. So lots of ice time, still generating shots. You got to wonder about the quality of those shots, but they still generated quite a bit. The Seattle second line, again, with Lehkonen and Nichushkin there, 3.3 expected goals for, 1.7 against. So pretty good defensively. They've had a lot of trouble finishing, which I think makes sense when you look at Compher, Nichushkin, and Lehkonen on a line together. Those guys aren't typically, high goal scorers or or super high percentage shooters anyway. So I guess that kind of makes sense. It just really worries me because, like, if you're a line that can generate a lot but struggles to score, in the best of times, what are you going to do against one of the best defensive teams in the league? So I'm not one of the people that would run out and play Colorado 2 as a fillery type here tonight. I think if I were to play Colorado, I like, it's just go back to the top line or nothing for me. If you want to take out Rodriguez and put in a power play guy like Lekin or Nichushkin, I think that's just fine. But Rodriguez did play 20 minutes last game because there wasn't a ton of power play time going around. So, I don't mind just playing, pardon me, all of Colorado 1 together, especially where they're the best leverage line on the entire slate. Like, if you're playing 20 lineups, you're probably playing some Colorado. And if you're playing single entry, I think there's merit to both sides, right? Like, the one side is Seattle's shut them down for 4 games now. The other side is all they need is one lucky game, and there's a ton of positive leverage ownership-wise on them here tonight. So I don't mind playing Colorado 1. On the Seattle side, I don't know if anybody looked at the ice time in that game, but the McCann, Beniers, Eberle line was not their top line, at least not by ice time.
I think it was Wenberg, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is because of the broken power plays, everybody just kind of plays a lot of weird minutes. Like, you'll see, I think Yanni Gord played over 20 minutes in that game, while Oliver Bjorkstrand and Eli Tolvanen were down closer to around 15 or 16 minutes. Even though those guys are on the top power play unit, it was because there just wasn't a lot of power plays in that game. So if you go look at game 1, Wenberg played over 20 minutes. Yanni Gord played over 20 minutes. Jaden Schwartz played 17-24, and then every other forward played under 17. So they're playing Gord and Wenberg a ton, and the Beniers line not a lot. I wonder if that's a matchup thing. Like, they don't want Beniers up against Nathan McKinnon or something like that, which, that makes sense to me. But Colorado dictated the matchups last game. And they specifically sent out Nathan McKinnon against Yanni Gordon and Eli Tolvanen and Oliver Bjorkstrand. So maybe the ice time for McCann and Eberle was dictated by what Colorado decided to do with their matchups. Like, maybe Seattle was just like, okay, you want to play them against our checking line, we'll play our checking line 20 minutes. We don't care. It kind of seems like that's what Seattle said. And they won the game. So it'll be interesting to see if Colorado goes back to that. I can't imagine they do. Colorado going up against the Beniers line would, I think, favor Colorado quite a bit. But it's tough to rely on the coach to just kind of change his strategy between game 1 and game 2 without any indication that he'll do it. So I don't mind going back to that Gord, Tolvanen, and Bjorkstrand line. Like, listen, if they're going to play Yanni Gord 20 minutes and, Bjorkstrand and Tolvanen are going to play 16 to 17 minutes, I don't care that they're coming in over-owned. I think they make one of those nice filler spots if you're playing super expensive Toronto or super expensive Tampa or even game stacking Colorado. I think they just make too much sense with the ice time that they're getting. One final note I just want to mention about that line. Tolvanen and Bjorkstrand are, quote, on the top power play unit, the one with Beniers. What I noticed about ownership for the other games, like, this is game 2 of this batch of games. Game 2 for the other batch of games was last night. I looked at the ownership that changes between game 1 and game 2 of the other batch of games. Most of the ownership changes came from the top power play guys. So for those other batch of games, it meant more. It meant a lot more it just meant a lot more ownership for the top power play guys. So I don't know if I want to go to McCann, Beniers, and Eberle, and I don't know if I want to go to Gord, Tolvanen, and Bjorkstrand because I'm worried that they're going to carry a lot more ownership than the 7% that we're showing. But it is Gord Tolvanen and Bjorkstrand that I like best. I just wonder if they're not going to end up in double-digit ownership.
I'm also wondering if Bednar changes those matchups because they're coming off a loss. You know what I mean? Wonder if he sends them out against a different line. I don't think it matters. They play so much, but
like I think in a nutshell, you probably even want them out against the Wenberg line. But maybe he's just resigned to the fact that there's not really a great matchup to go up against, because there's really not when you look at the Kraken lines.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, the one I wouldn't at home would be the Gord line, but not Jared Bednar. I'm not in that room. We have a $4.99 super chat from our neighborhood friendly M Haas 17, who's had a very rough few weeks, I may add, in our Discord. He is going through it, but he says in Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator voice, will Cliffy be back? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
I mean, maybe he means next season. It's certainly too early to say that right now. I don't know where I'm going to be in 6 months. If I'm still playing DFS and writing about DFS, I'd probably still be here, but we'll see what things look like. We're not going to get into it right now, but the sports betting is changing the DFS landscape quite a bit. I think you and I were talking about that in DMs before the show. So we'll see what things look like when September rolls around. But if I can come back, I'd love to be back. If DK offers NHL contests.
Yeah. Thanks for caring, Haas. What am I, just chopped liver to you? You're mad at me because I'm yelling at you about catering trays?
You might be.
Yeah, probably. Seriously, what's the catering tray for, though? Anyway, if you click the link in the description below, you can get 50% off any of our platinum packages, weekly or monthly. At 50% off, the weekly platinum package will be under $20, which is a steal. The monthly will be under $60, normally $120. It gets you access to all of our sports and all of our tools. And I know it's not NFL season, which is the biggie, but we have the NBA playoffs going on right now. We have NHL playoffs as well. We have UFC. We have MLB in full swing. We have golf, esports, NASCAR, F1. So this is a great time to take advantage of that, and you can get 50% off. You have to click the link in the description below. It will auto-populate the code you need, and you sign up from there. Let's move on to the last game of the slate here. The Winnipeg Jets with a 2.5 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3 total. Connor Hellebuyck, Laurent Brossoit are confirmed. Vegas looked completely shell-shocked in the first game. The Winnipeg top line went pretty well there. I think there might be some merit to going back to Vegas here. The problem is the ownership is a bit high for my liking.
Yeah, that was my first note that I wrote down, was that high ownership on every Vegas line. The Jack Eichel, it certainly depends what they go back to, but the indications are they're going to start the game with the lines that they started the last game with. So that means going back to Barbashev, Eichel, Marchessault, going back to Amadio, Stevenson, Stone, going back to Kessel, Smith, and Carlson. But the fact that they started last game with that, got their brains beat in, and changed their lineups, but are going back to it, tells me that one goal from Winnipeg in the first period, and these Vegas lines are getting blown up again. So if they don't come out and hit the ground running, we could see a lot different Vegas line combinations by the time the second period rolls around. So every Vegas line's coming in with negative leverage. There's going to be the least amount of leverage on the Jack Eichel line, usually the most expensive line. Usually the most expensive line has the least negative leverage. So if you're to play Vegas, you could go to the Jack Eichel line. I was looking at the Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev numbers. Like Barbashev, we said it on the last show when we were talking about Vegas. He was under the learning tree in St. Louis under really good playmaker guys like Ryan O'Reilly, David Perron. I think you might even be able to throw Robert Thomas into that conversation. So Barbashev, his playmaking skills really took off over the last few years. It's the one thing he really, really excels at. And I was looking over their last 100-ish minutes of the regular season. They got all the way up to 3.1 expected goals and 4.6 actual goals per 60 minutes. So Eichel, Barbashev, and Marchessault is kind of tickling my fancy again. The problem is like, I think there's an argument that this current Winnipeg top line of Connor, Dubois, and Scheifele is the worst defensive line that they have. And I want Vegas one to go into that matchup, but they sent out Stevenson and Stone against the Winnipeg top line last game, and Stevenson and Stone got absolutely embarrassed. And I'm wondering if they don't change it up. Like, listen, I know there's conversation around Golden Knights fans right now about whether or not you play Mark Stone. If Mark Stone's healthy, you play him. I don't care if he hasn't played in 2 months or whatever. He's in the lineup. Whether you play him 21 minutes and put him in a shutdown matchup against the opposing team's top line right away, I think is an open question. But he plays. I just wonder if they send out Stevenson and Stone back in that shutdown match. Because, like, I don't know how many games of Mark Stone's I've watched over the years. A lot. I don't remember a lot where he just flat out looked bad like he did in game one. He just looked bad. And a lot of rust. He had 2 months off, no game action. Give him some time. They had less than 2 weeks to figure it out. So I'm wondering if we don't see, like, maybe they use the fourth line at times in some shutdown matchups. Maybe they use Eichel at times in some shutdown matchups. I don't think they want to send the Phil Kessel line out into shutdown matchups, but I wonder if Stevenson and Stone don't see some easier competition quote, easier competition further down the lineup. And that would make me want to go to Eichel, Marchessault, and Barbashev at least a little bit. 2 out of the 3 guys still on the top power play unit. Whether that's worth anything, remains to be seen. Winnipeg does have a good penalty kill. The Vegas power play did not look great good in game one. So I do like Eichel, Marchessault, and Barbashev back again. But, there is going to be quite a bit of ownership on them. And that's just the thing that worries me. And again, they could be broken up after like the first 10 minutes of the game. Like if they don't get off to a good start, the lines are going to be fluid again. And that's just a big problem with stacking Vegas here. But I would go back to the Eichel line of anything. On the Winnipeg side, so like obviously the top line is the one that should be in play. I had a little bit of interest in the second line, Niederreiter, Nemestikov, and Wheeler. Quite surprisingly, Wheeler and Nemestikov have great offensive numbers together this season. 3.2 expected goals for, 3.5 actual goals for. Now, a lot of that was with Nikolai Ehlers, but Niederreiter's a pretty good replacement for him. And in a small sample without Niederreiter in the regular season, Nemestikov and Wheeler were good together. So I don't mind that Winnipeg 2 line as a filler. But there's coming in with a ton of ownership. Like, that's the only problem. Like, I think I'd rather go, maybe to the Rangers third line or back to that Gord line or, Toronto 3 or something like that. I just think there are spots you can go get a pretty low-owned line at the same price. That's my only thing. So I think I'd be more in on Winnipeg 1 despite higher ownership. They just have a way higher top 2 stack probability. I don't mind Winnipeg 2, though. If, they do have good numbers together, I don't think it's a terrible matchup. I just worry about ownership. That's all. So I think in this game, it's the Eichel line and then Winnipeg 2 on the other side. But I think there are probably 5 playable lines at the very least in this game, if not 6. So I think there's a lot to like, even though this game might carry a lot of ownership.
You know what else about the first game of the series that was just crazy? Alex Pietrangelo didn't even have a shot attempt. Not one.
And weird ice time allocation as well. Like, I think he played 23 minutes, and then every other defenseman was under 20. Like, they did that Quinn Hughes thing, where Quinn Hughes gets a lot of ice time in Vancouver, and then everybody else plays like 17 minutes. Like, it was weird ice time allocation, but I don't know. I'm not coach.
Yeah. I kind of like this slate a little bit better than the other day. It's a little bit more open.
Sorry, I just want to mention one last thing about that Winnipeg Vegas game. With Ehlers, Ehlers is officially a game time decision for Winnipeg. He skated yesterday, I think, but he didn't skate on either power play unit. And, not even being on the second power play unit is a bridge too far. So I suspect that Ehlers is not going to be playing tonight. And the Winnipeg power play actually scored a lot more with Blake Wheeler on the power play, not necessarily replacing Ehlers, just having Wheeler there on the top power play unit. The Winnipeg power play was a lot better with him than without, which I think makes sense because Wheeler's still a pretty good playmaker. He's just, you have to excuse my friend. He's kind of slow.
That's one of my favorite memes that I've used recently. You're going to have to excuse my friend. He's a little bit slow. I think the slate is a little bit more wide open, which is good because the slate on Tuesday just kind of like, let's jam Colorado and fill around them. And it didn't go too well. I think I have some interesting decisions to make.
I jammed Vegas and filled around them, and that didn't go well either.
Yeah, we just living the dream, making a difference on Tuesday. Let's talk about these defensemen. We'll have to wait and see what the Tampa Bay blue line looks like because if Hedman's out, I think Sergachev's a pretty good play that bumps up. Nick Perbix, got to talk to your doctor about him. Darren Radish, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, we'll have to wait and see what the line or what the
Radish played like 24 minutes last game after Hedman got injured. And Perbix only played like 17 or 18. Seems like they favor Radish right now.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what they look like there, but it looks like the other blue lines are generally similar to what they were the other night. And I will say, it was interesting on Tuesday because everyone was jamming like McKinnon and Rantanen. Cale Makar, he didn't have a great game, but he was pretty low owned because he's the most expensive on the board. I think he's an interesting option here tonight if you're spending up with D. Obviously, that's not like breaking news, but if he's going to be a bit lower owned than McKinnon and Rantanen, I think Makar is a pretty good play in the blue line. Who else are you liking?
Besides the ones you've mentioned already, the guy in the mid price range, I'm going to mention him again. He had, I think, 5 block shots in game 1. It was Adam Larson. Him and Vince Dunn played like 27 or 28 minutes or something like that in game 1. And Adam Larson is a shot blocking machine, and he's got a little bit of offensive juice to him. Like, he's not just a pure shot blocking guy. He can jump into the play. So, Mikhail Sergachev in that mid price range, I think makes the most sense, but he's also going to carry a ton of ownership. And I think Adam Larson at his price, he might have to block a lot of shots again. He's honestly I like him here tonight. I also mentioned Josh Morrissey. I know it's not necessarily a great power play spot against Vegas, but he's going to have to play a lot of minutes again. And like I said, the Winnipeg power play has been better with Blake Wheeler. So maybe in the couple chances that they do get, maybe Morrissey can donk an assist or something like that. For the cheap guys, like Darren Radish and John Marino were at the top of my list. For like the super cheap, I think Luke Shen, I hate to say it, I think he's playable. He's 25. He's 2,500 and he'll play 15 minutes. But I'd rather play Radish or Marino if you're like dumpster diving. If you're paying up a little bit more expensive, Keandre Miller for sure. Justin Schultz, he's not going to play a lot of minutes for Seattle either, but he's still running a power play unit. Braden McNabb, I think he got the second most minutes after Pietrangelo in game 1. So Braden McNabb and Dylan DeMello, he played a lot of minutes with Josh Morrissey in game 1 as well.
Yeah. It's interesting to see some of these minute allocations because I wanted to play Brock Faber again last night, and I saw he only played 17 minutes in a double overtime game where players like Matt Dumba were playing like 38. So it's like some of these guys, they just shorten their bench, which is, you get it, but like you got to play these guys that get the minutes sometimes, so which makes them not cheap, but that's what makes playoff hockey building lineups fun here. Looking at the goalies again, I like all the road goalies again. There's not like a home goalie that I'm super confident. Like, I guess like Georgiev is fine, but the Avs would have to win there. I guess Vitek Vanacek, and you hope the Devils bounce back because the Rangers do shoot the puck a bunch. But I'm more on the road goalies here.
Yeah, I like Igor was at the top of my list. Grubauer was just behind him. I'm mad I didn't play Grubauer in the first game. I had him in my lineup, and I took him out, and I put in Igor just because I wanted to be safe or whatever. It's just such a fish move. Anyways, I do like Igor and Grubauer again. The home goalie I would go to is Brossoit, right? Like if Vegas turns in like another terrible defensive effort like they just did, like Brossoit might see a fair bit of puck here tonight. And like Winnipeg, they were top 10 by shot rate over the final 6 weeks of the season. It's not like they don't shoot. Like, if Vegas is bad defensively again, Brossoit could see a fair bit of volume. So I think of like the expensive home goalies. He's my favorite here tonight.
Yeah. I'm probably going to use someone on the road. It's probably going to be Igor. But I haven't built my lineup yet. Who you looking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go with a guy that I made an outlandish prediction before the season about that became a wildly wrong outlandish prediction. But I want to see him have some playoff success, so I'm going to put it out into the universe. Maybe he'll get some good mojo going his way. I'm going with Jack Eichel.
The Eichel slander has just been brutal. Just brutal.
I'm sick of it, Josh, is what I am. I'm sick of it.
Yeah. I'm going to use Igor. There's a shock. I need to just stick a thorn in the Leaf side for the next 6 months because this is the last time. Mitch Marner, hat trick pick, baby.
Perfect. That's the perfect way to end the season.
Yeah. But for real, this is our last show of the season, so this will be our official goodbye. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in all season. Thank you for supporting us all season. The viewership has been great. The feedback has been great. Truly appreciate all the positive and constructive criticism, or like Devils fans getting mad at me for calling them fair weather, even though I put a winky face in there and I was being facetious. So B-Man, gotta get a little tougher skin. But no, but thank you very much. And if we are back next season, can't wait to see you in October.
There should be a button that is red and one that has a knuckle that has this. And click on those buttons.
There you go.
I've got nothing else to add to what Avery just said. Other than let's enjoy some playoff hockey. Let's have a good off season. We'll see where things stand next year. But thanks to everyone for tuning in all season. It has been a lot of fun. This has been my favorite season. I think since I started doing this like 6 years ago. I think this has been my favorite season, like by far. Maybe it's just because we finally got to have a normal one after a few unnormal ones, but was a lot of fun. Let's hope we can keep the screenshots coming in the Discord. I got nothing else to say. Go Kings, go!
Yeah, our Kings. Let's make a run, Kings.
Our Los Angeles Kings.
Our Los Angeles Kings. Get on the ice, Fiala. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you next season.
See you next season, everyone.
Boogie.